This is kind of big and ridiculous, but it is a cool watch.
It is cool.
I don't know. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the Omega Seamaster PloProf, one of the most iconic divers of the 70s, and it's still just as iconic and unique today. I love the story of this watch and how it came to be, how it got this ridiculous, unique shape, and how Omega has brought it back and done its service in the modern era with some of the things that they've done right, as well as some of the things that don't quite adhere to its heritage as much as we might like. This isn't exactly a watch that qualifies as everyday practical like other dive watches, tool watches, like even the Seamaster 300. This is something else, so I think it needs to be approached a little bit differently, and I think it begs the question, who is this watch for these days? Now, when this watch was designed in the mid-60s, Omega enlisted the help of Frederick Robert, who founded Aquastar, and some pretty iconic dive watches and innovative dive watches of their own. Omega brought this guy in to help with the development of this watch, and Omega had a few patents on how they wanted this one to go, all in service of saturation divers. This was really aimed at a niche group of pretty hardcore divers, and to that end they had the help of Comex in developing this watch. Comex divers used this watch and tested this watch on their Janus projects, which was really pushing forward how we understand the effects of high pressure environments and saturation diving on the human body. So pretty gnarly stuff, and this watch had to be able to keep up with what they were doing. And to do that, Omega really came up with some innovative solutions around the PloProf. The first of which was a monoblock case design. The thinking there being that if helium could not enter the case, they wouldn't have to design anything into the case to let it out, such as a helium release valve, which is something we see a lot of even to this day on Omega watches. Even the modern ones have it, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. The original PloProf was released to the public in 1971. Now, the original PloProf was a pretty hardcore watch, and it served the needs of those divers just fine, almost too well, and it was even deemed a little bit overkill for those divers. And by the early 70s, Comex had actually developed a relationship with Rolex and went on to help them develop some of their great iconic divers as well. But there's something special about this PloProf, and it comes down to more than just its shape. Of course, its history and how it came to be, the types of people that were involved, not only in designing it, but in testing it, I think put this watch in kind of this legendary status today. And of course, the shape of the watch keeps it instantly recognizable even from across a room. It still feels like a little bit overkill. If it was for them back in the 60s, and that was a 600-meter diver then, it certainly is for most of us, even modern recreational divers. This is certainly way overkill for. So who's this watch for? Well, a certain kind of collector, that's for sure. I know there still are saturation divers, commercial divers, and the like, but their reliance on a tool like this, a mechanical dive watch, is probably a little bit less than it was back in the 60s and 70s. Let's talk about some of the cool features here that they designed into this watch. So immediately you'll notice that the shape of this case is quite strange, with this form over here on the right hand side that has an orange button sticking off of the top. Now this button, when it's pressed, unlocks the bezel and allows it to spin in either direction. It's very satisfying, clicky, chunky movement here of the bezel, which I like. It's very confident. There's not much slop in it. So it's a great bezel, and of course the bezel itself is massively legible. It's fully indexed here, and then it's got these huge numbers marking every 10 minutes. And the modern one here, it is ceramic. It has this really kind of lovely color quality that can turn gray or black depending on the light. I really like how they've implemented the bezel here, and I think it works really well. It's fun to use with this button on the top, and of course it's one of those things that makes the PloProf just so unique. The other is this huge appendage over here off of the 9 o'clock side, which houses the crown and the crown guard in it. So this whole apparatus screws in and out with the crown. So this watch was re-released by Omega in 2009, and they moved away from the monoblock case design, unfortunately, and they even revised the shape of the case slightly. It's a little bulkier, it's a little beefier even. It was released in steel initially, and then in 2016 they released the titanium version here. Now titanium is a material that makes a lot of sense for this watch given its size and given its heft, and it even ties to the original a little bit as well, as there were prototype versions of the original PloProf that were built in titanium, but the material was a bit scarce back in the late 60s, and it was pretty difficult to get a hold of in bulk unless you were the US government. So in 2016 this watch did get released in titanium, and it got a exhibition case back. So you can see the caliber 8912 through the back. This is a movement that also ditches the date, which is a move that I'm just fine with. I love the dial design of this watch. It's very clean and very purpose-driven. There's something heavily over-engineered about this watch, and it kind of comes through in the design, even in the dial, with this massively oversized minute hand that's framed in bright orange. It just feels special, and it feels different from other dive watches, from most other dive watches. And that's kind of what the appeal of this watch is. It comes down to those kinds of details around the design, as well as its considerable heritage as well. So when Omega brought this back, I think they may have lost the plot with the PloProf a little bit. What made that watch so special, in addition to its unique features and design, was that monoblock case. And I think that's something that we don't really see very often today. Seiko did it back in the 60s. They've of course brought it back in their re-releases as well. But Omega chose a different route with these modern PloProfs, and it meant bringing back the helium release valve as well. In 2023, Omega celebrated the 75th anniversary of the Seamaster, and with it released a whole new range of Seamaster watches in this kind of monotone blues. And one of them was a PloProf with a new case. And it went back to the original formula a bit closer and includes a monoblock case design. There's still a helium release valve there for some reason. Now, this feels like an odd decision to me, especially given they were trying to go back to the original formula that was developed in the 60s. I think that would have been a really unique approach to ditch the helium release valve altogether, but it's still there. Hopefully that watch continues to evolve in that case, and that we'll start to see some more normal colorways of that soon. But this watch here is from 2016. This is the titanium case PloProf. This has a 1,200 meter depth rating, which is 4,000 feet, so still very much in the realm of overkill, even for recreational divers. And believe it or not, I've had the chance to go diving in this watch once or twice, and each time I've been hesitant to do it, to the point that I have to turn it down, just because it does still feel a little bit over the top, and it's a little bit strange to go diving to 60, 70, 80 feet with something like this strapped to your wrist. So this is a watch that has not seen the water, unfortunately. And I gander it's probably the same with a lot of people that own this watch and buy this watch and collect this watch. It's not exactly for its over-engineered qualities and its ability to go pretty much anywhere. It's really for the story and the unique history associated with this watch, and its celebration of this really, truly incredible, innovative design from Omega. Now, would it be cool to see Omega bring some of this stuff into a more wearable and approachable case? Maybe, but that kind of comes with the package of this watch. So I think it's okay. It is surprisingly wearable for what it is, but again, it's not something that is going to be like an everyday tool watch or an everyday diver in the same way that a Seamaster 300 or a Pelagos even would be. So it really kind of relegates it to the experience of the watch. Wearing it certainly is a really cool experience, especially on this lovely mesh strap, but it doesn't quite hit the practical notes that you need it to get a whole ton of use out of it. And this isn't exactly an inexpensive watch, so it really leaves it just for the people who appreciate it for that heritage and for its unique design, which makes it all the more strange that they keep putting the helium release valve in these modern ones, because most of the people that buy it and are going to spend this much money on it, I think, want something that really harkens back to that original formula. And I mentioned this great mesh bracelet which comes on the watch, which of course was on the original as well. This also comes with a rubber unit, just like the original came on a isoframe as well. But these mesh bracelets really push it to another level, in my opinion. And it's got this great quick adjustment hidden inside the clasp that works with the press of a button. And then in addition to that, there is a pull-out extension link diver. So in total, there's about 50 millimeters worth of adjustments here that you can make in the clasp. So that, coupled with the fact that this case is titanium, I think there is something to be said about the everyday approachability and wearability of this thing. They've taken it as far as they can, but it's still not quite as easy to kick around in as some of those other watches that I mentioned before. I mentioned the caliber 8912 here. This is a master chronometer from Omega, and of course gets their coaxial escapement. So it's got all the modern bells and whistles that you expect in kind of higher end Omega watches. And it looks pretty nice as well through the exhibition case back, but my preference by far would be to go back to the closed case back and ideally the monoblock case here. That's kind of what made this watch special to begin with. So is this watch special, unique, and fun to wear? Absolutely. Is it easy to recommend to someone to add to their collection? Not so much. Now, this would not be an ideal, second or third watch, but if you have a more extensive collection of dive watches, you are more aware of dive watch history, and it's something that you celebrate or you enjoy learning about, you enjoy reading about, that's the kind of person that I think this watch makes a lot of sense for. Now, these things still trade for around $10,000, give or take a little bit. So again, not an inexpensive watch, especially when you consider that it's not a super practical everyday companion. That said though, again, it's a great experience, and I think this watch is a great reminder that you can kind of get outside outside the box a little bit with designs like this, and I love seeing a brand like Omega really kind of take risks like this. I would love to see more dive watches with weird, funky cases that house really innovative solutions for divers. And whether or not they are everyday wearable or something like that just kind of takes a back seat to what they're building. And these days it feels like every dive watch, every tool watch has to kind of fit this go anywhere, do anything mentality. Watches that are very niche and built for a specific purpose, I think, are all the more interesting. And this watch is maybe the king of interesting dive watches. So with that, I think this watch is still worth celebrating. I'm glad that Omega is sticking with it and still making it. I really love the new rendition that they did for the 75th anniversary of the Seamaster, and I dearly hope to see them continue to iterate on that watch. I have a lot more of my thoughts on this PloProf now live over on thedeeptrack.com. I'll leave a link to that down below. A quick reminder that the Deep Track is viewer supported, so I'll leave a link to the Patreon down below as well. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so, and if you enjoy this content, please be sure to leave a like and maybe share it. It helps me out a lot. Until next time, take care.